I won $50 million and took my son to my husband's company to tell him the news, but the sounds coming from his office made me freeze in place. My name is Kendra Miller, and at 32, if anyone asked me what my life was like before that Tuesday morning, I would say it was ordinary to the point of suffocating. My husband, Preston, was the director of a small construction company in Charlotte, North Carolina. My first love, the only man I had ever dated. We had been married for 5 years and had a 3-year-old son, Jaden, who was my sunshine, my entire world wrapped up in 40 pounds of sticky fingers and carefree laughter. Since Jaden was born, I had quit my job at a medical billing company to devote myself entirely to raising him, managing the house, and building our small home in a modest suburb outside Charlotte, where the streetlights flickered, the sidewalks were cracked, but the rent was affordable. Preston handled the finances with the confidence of someone who believed that understanding money automatically made him superior to those who did not. He left early and came home late, and even on weekends he was still busy with clients and closing deals, driving all over Metro Charlotte in his pickup truck that reeked of coffee and ambition. I felt sorry for my husband for working so hard without ever complaining, and I told myself I needed to be his solid support, the place he could lean on after struggling with the harsh world. Sometimes Preston would snap under pressure, snapping at me over small things like dinner being too salty or Jaden's toys scattered across the living room. But I stayed silent and let it go. I thought every couple had their ups and downs. As long as they loved each other and cared about their family, everything would be fine. Our savings were almost non-existent because Preston insisted the company was newly established and all profits had to be reinvested. I trusted him without the slightest doubt, the way I had been taught that good wives should trust their husbands, even when a voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe I should ask more questions. That Tuesday morning, soft sunlight fell over Charlotte, streaming through the kitchen window where I stood washing the breakfast dishes while Jaden played with Duplo blocks on the cheap foam mat in the living room, humming along to cartoons that taught him colors and numbers in a voice far too cheerful for the real world. While wiping down the kitchen counter, I noticed the Mega Millions ticket I had hurriedly bought the day before, stuck on my shopping notebook next to Jaden's dried yogurt from breakfast. I had bought it at a small liquor store next to Kroger when I ducked in to escape a sudden downpour, and an old woman with wrinkled hands and a Carolina Panthers hat had pitifully asked me to buy a lucky ticket. I had never believed in those games of chance. They felt like a tax on people who didn't know how to calculate. But I felt sorry for her and spent $5 on a quick pick ticket. Looking back, I laughed at my own foolishness. It was probably garbage. But as if by fate, I pulled out my phone and went to the official North Carolina lottery website just as a joke, expecting nothing at all, ready to throw it away and forget this tiny moment of weakness. The results from the previous night's drawing appeared on the screen with sharp black numbers against a white background. I started muttering out loud, 5, 12, 23. My heart skipped a beat. The ticket in my hand also had 5, 12, and 23. My hands shaking, I kept checking. 34, 45, and the megaball, 5. Oh my God. I had matched all 5 numbers and the megaball. $50 million. 50 million. I tried to count the zeros in my head. 7 zeros. More money than anyone in my family had ever seen. More money than felt real. And my hands shook so badly that I dropped my phone. It clattered onto the vinyl floor, screen down, and I sank onto the cold kitchen tile, my head spinning, the world tilting on its axis. I really did win the lottery. The first feeling wasn't joy, but a violent shock so strong it made my stomach clench and my throat tighten. I took a deep breath, and suddenly a wild rush of excitement surged up from my chest like champagne bubbles, overwhelming and dizzying. I started to sob, the sound catching so hard in my throat that I had to cover my mouth with my hand so Jaden wouldn't hear and get scared. Oh my God, unbelievable luck. I was rich. My son would have a bright future, the best schools, college without debt, opportunities I had never even dared to dream of. I would buy a beautiful house in a safe suburb of Charlotte with good schools and sidewalks without cracks. And Preston, my husband, would no longer have to work himself to the bone. The burden of the company, the debt, the stress that made him snap at me, everything would be solved. He wouldn't come home irritable anymore, wouldn't look at me like I was just another problem to deal with. At last, we would be happy again, like in the beginning before life became complicated. I pictured Preston's face when he heard the news. He would pull me into a tight hug, overflowing with joy, maybe even lift me off the ground the way he used to when we were still dating. My love for him, the years of sacrifice and quiet support, might finally help him bring his big dream to life, building something that truly mattered. I couldn't wait another second. I had to tell him right away. I had to see his face light up with the news that would change everything. I grabbed my wallet and carefully slipped the ticket into the zippered inner pocket, where I usually kept pads and emergency cash. I picked Jaden up, and he looked at me in confusion at the sudden movement, his cartoon left unfinished. "Jaden, Mommy's baby, we're going to see Daddy. Mommy has a big surprise for him." He laughed and wrapped his sticky little arms around my neck, and I didn't even care that he was smearing syrup into my hair. I rushed out the door and called an Uber on my phone, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. It felt like the whole world was smiling at me, like every red light turning green was the universe saying, Okay, go tell him." Me, an ordinary stay-at-home mom in North Carolina who clipped coupons and bought generic cereal, was now the owner of $50 million. My life, my family's life, a brilliant new chapter was beginning right now, today, in this very moment. I squeezed Jaden's small hand and whispered, "Jaden, our life has changed, my son. Everything from now on will be different." The Uber stopped in front of the small office building downtown, where Preston's company was located on the second floor. It was his dream, my pride. I had gone everywhere with him to handle paperwork when he first started the company, stayed up late helping him calculate those early contracts at our tiny kitchen table, my hand cramping from writing numbers while he paced back and forth talking about his vision. I carried Jaden in my arms, my heart pounding with excitement and joy, and walked inside. The reception area smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink, the familiar scent of an office whether you worked at a Fortune 500 company or a struggling startup. The receptionist, a young woman who recognized me from a few previous visits, smiled at me. "Good morning, Kendra. You're here to see Mr. Miller?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady but unable to hide the excitement bubbling up in every word. "Yes! I have wonderful news for him. He's in his office. He has a guest, I think?" She hesitated, glancing at her computer screen. I think so. But I haven't seen anyone go in. Should I let him know you're here?" "No, don't bother," I said, waving my hand and smiling so hard my face burned. "I want to surprise him. Just keep working." I didn't want anyone to interrupt this special moment between the two of us. I wanted to see Preston's face with my own eyes when I told him we had $50 million, wanted to watch disbelief turn into joy, wanted to be there when our entire future changed. I tiptoed down the hallway toward his office, my sneakers silent on the industrial carpet. The closer I got, the faster my heart beat, anticipation building like pressure inside a sealed box. I was about to see the man of my life, the one I had loved unconditionally despite his flaws and his recent coldness, and give him a gift he could never have imagined. His office door was slightly open, not fully closed, with a little light and sound slipping out into the hallway. Just as I lifted my hand to knock, I heard something from inside that made my blood turn ice cold and stole my breath. It was a laugh, breathless and seductive, sweet and intimate in a way that made me feel sick. "Come on, sweetheart. Do you really mean that?" The voice sounded familiar. It wasn't the voice of a business partner or a client discussing a contract. It was the voice of a woman talking to her lover. I froze, unease flooding my mind like cold water, rushing into a sinking ship. Sensing my tension, Jaden made a small sound. I hurriedly covered his mouth and signaled for silence, my trembling hand pressed against his soft cheek. With my other hand, I pulled him tight against my chest, shielding his small ears. Then I heard Preston's voice, the voice I had known in every breath, listened to for 7 years of dating and marriage. But now it sounded strangely gentle, persuasive, and intimate in a way he hadn't spoken to me in months. "Why are you in such a hurry, sweetheart? Let me deal with my backwoods wife first. Once that's settled, I'll file for divorce immediately." My heart shattered, truly shattered, as if something broke apart inside my chest, sharp fragments slicing into soft flesh. The backwoods wife? He was talking about me. His wife? The mother of his child? Divorce. I took a step back, shaking so badly I thought I might drop Jaden. Then I pressed myself into a corner, trying to listen to their conversation. Jaden, sensing my pain with a child's instinct, went silent and buried his face into my chest. The woman's voice came again, and this time I recognized her clearly. It was Sienna, the girl Preston had introduced as his best friend, the one who had come over for dinner many times, the one I had genuinely liked, the one I had trusted inside my home around my son. "What about your plan? Do you think it'll work? I hear your wife has some savings." Preston laughed. A laugh I had never heard from him before, sneering and cruel, completely foreign. "She doesn't understand anything about life. She lives tucked away in the house like a pet. She believes everything I say because she's too stupid to question anything. I already checked that savings account. She told me she used it all to buy life insurance for Jaden. Perfect. She cut off her own escape route." The sounds of clothes coming off, loud kissing, then obscene noises. The soft moans and shallow gasps that no matter how innocent I had been about my marriage, I understood their meaning with terrifying clarity. I went rigid, my whole body stiff. The $50 million lottery ticket in my pocket suddenly burned like a hot coal against my skin, heavy as if it were about to drag me to the floor. The joy from just minutes earlier had completely vanished, replaced by a bitter, filthy truth that stuck in my throat like gall. My husband, the man I had blindly trusted, the father of the child sleeping in my arms, had been betraying me right there in his office while I stood in the hallway holding his son. And this wasn't just betrayal. They had a plan to remove me, ruin me, and take everything. I bit my lip until it bled, fighting back the sob in my throat that could give me away. Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and bitter, soaking into Jaden's shirt where he was pressed against me. What should I do? Storm in, cause a scene, scream, cry, and expose them? Suddenly, a strange calm washed over me, cold and clear like ice water running through my veins. If I rushed in right now, what would I gain? I would be the failed woman abandoned by her husband, the emotional woman who couldn't keep her man, and I could even lose Jaden in the custody battle that would follow. They would paint me as unstable, as the problem, as the reason Preston had fallen. I took a deep breath, my chest aching. I needed to hear more. I needed to know exactly what they planned to do to me so I could prepare to defend myself. I turned on my phone's recording mode. Inside, after they were done, their voices came again. This time it was Sienna, breathless. "What about the fake $50,000 company debt plan? Do you think it's safe? I'm scared we'll get caught." Preston's voice was confident, reassuring. "Don't worry. The head accountant is very reliable. She owes me. Fake ledgers, loss reports, massive debt. It's all been prepared and looks completely legal. In court, I'll say the company is on the brink of bankruptcy. Kendra doesn't understand anything about finance. She'll panic when she sees the numbers and sign the divorce papers without hesitation, desperate to escape the debt. She'll leave with nothing, and on top of that, she'll be labeled as the woman who abandoned her husband when he needed her. Meanwhile, all the real assets of the company have already been transferred to a subsidiary in my mother's name. She'll never find them." The floor seemed to open beneath my feet. The cruelty, the calculation, the complete lack of conscience. It was staggering. "What about the child?" Sienna asked. "What about Jaden?" "Right now, the kid is with his mother," Preston replied casually, as if he were talking about rearranging furniture. Later, when we get married and stabilize financially, if I want, I'll bring him back. A son needs a father, right? The court will settle it in my favor once I remarry and my life is stable." That last sentence struck whatever was left of my heart like a hammer. Even his own son was nothing more than a tool, an object that could be discarded and reclaimed whenever it was convenient. My tears stopped falling. A bitter cold surged up my spine, replacing the shock and the pain. The man in that office was no longer Preston, the husband I loved. He was a monster wearing my husband's face, using my husband's voice to plan my destruction. I looked at Jaden, asleep on my shoulder, trusting and innocent, completely unaware that his father had just calmly discussed using him as leverage. "My son, forgive your mother for being so naive. But don't worry, I will not let anyone take you from me. I will not let anyone hurt us." I held him tighter, feeling his warmth, his steady breathing, the absolute trust he placed in me. The $50 million ticket in my pocket was no longer a lucky gift or a happy surprise. It was a weapon, a lifeline, my tool for survival and revenge. I turned and slipped away silently, like a shadow, my sneakers gliding over the carpet without a sound. I couldn't let them discover me. I had to get out immediately. I had to think. I had to plan. The receptionist looked surprised when she saw me leaving. "Kendra, you're leaving already? You haven't even seen Mr. Miller yet?" I forced an awkward smile, my voice trembling despite all my effort. "Oh, I just remembered. I left my wallet at home. I have to go get it. Please don't tell Preston I was here. I want to come back tomorrow and surprise him." "All right," the girl said, looking confused, but asking no more questions. I rushed out of the building into the blazing Charlotte sunlight, feeling filthy and wrong, ordered another Uber with shaking hands, and the moment I sank into the back seat holding my son, the sobs burst out of me. I cried for my own stupidity, for a love that was dead, for the cruelty of the man I once thought was my entire world, for every sacrifice I had made believing it mattered to someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to be eliminated. The car moved through the traffic of Charlotte, past gas stations and restaurant chains, through a normal world continuing on with its ordinary day, carrying a woman who had just died inside, and another who was being reborn from the ashes of betrayal. His plan was a fake debt of $50,000. I had $50 million. He chose this path. Now we would play, and I would play with him to the very end. The 40-minute ride back to my small apartment in Charlotte suddenly turned into a journey of torture, where my 5 years of marriage replayed one by one, every memory now repainted with a fresh coat of betrayal. Every song on the radio sounded like it was deliberately mocking me. Every billboard showing smiling couples felt like a slap the universe had reserved just for me. I thought about all those evenings Preston had been working late for months. "I have to stay at the office a bit. The client wants last-minute changes," he would say, often staying at the company until 9 or 10 at night. "I have to meet them to close the deal. We're at a critical stage." He couldn't disappoint them, not me, but them. The expensive dinners charged to the credit card that he said were client entertainment. The new perfume I had noticed on his collar, then reassured myself that maybe he was just trying to regain a little confidence to meet clients. Even the way he had suddenly started going to the gym regularly, coming home with a firmer body and skin still damp with post-workout sweat, things that once made me feel secure, thinking he was taking care of himself for his family. Turns out he was just making himself more attractive, just not for me. My phone buzzed with a text from Preston. "Meeting ran long. Don't wait for me for dinner. Love you." Love you. The two words that used to be my shelter, now drilled into my chest like two blades being twisted deeper with every second. How could he type those words with the same fingers that had just been tangled in another woman's hair? Our small apartment welcomed me with its familiar calm, but everything had changed forever in my eyes. The travel brochure advertising a beach vacation was still sprawled across the dining table, with pictures of romantic sunsets and couples holding hands along the shore, as if mocking me. Preston had once spoken enthusiastically about that trip, about a new beginning, about rekindling the marriage, and turning our family to a new page. Now, looking back, I wondered if those words had always carried two meanings that I was too trusting to see. I put Jaden on the bed, then locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tile floor, and cried until my tears ran dry. Then I moved quietly around the apartment, like an investigator examining a crime scene. His phone charging cable suddenly appeared in the shared bathroom, disconnected from the outlet by the bed, where we used to place our two chargers side by side. An unfamiliar suit hanging in the closet, the kind I knew for sure I had never gone shopping with him to buy. A restaurant receipt stuffed into his jacket pocket, the name of an upscale place downtown he had never taken me to. The wedding photo on the TV shelf showed two people so young they looked almost naive. I stared at the 27-year-old girl in the white lace dress, her eyes shining as she looked at the man beside her, as if he held the key to eternal happiness. That girl had no idea she was marrying a man capable of meticulously planning to shove her out of his life, the way one discards a leftover object. I collapsed into the kitchen chair, the same chair where this very morning I had been clipping coupons, counting every grocery dollar, believing I was building a safe, loving future for my son. Now everything suddenly felt ridiculous and foolish. I waited for the breakdown to hit, for the screaming, the denial, the panicked calls to friends searching for comfort. But none of that came. Instead of shattering, something else crept into my chest, cold, heavy, sharp, taking the place where my heart used to be. A thin but solid layer of ice began to form, sealing in the pain that was still bleeding. Instead of screaming, I felt another instinct rising, calm, calculating, and dangerous. I still couldn't tell anyone. The lottery ticket was my secret weapon, and the moment anyone found out, I would become weak. Preston would find a way to demand it back, seize it, use the courts, lawyers, and his charm to convince everyone that I owed him something. I needed someone I could trust completely. Only my mother could be that person. That night, when Preston came home with an irritated face, maybe because Sienna had demanded something, or because guilt was gnawing at him in a way he didn't even recognize, I played my role perfectly. "Honey, I think I'm getting sick. Can I take Jaden to my mom's place for a few days? I need to rest instead of passing this on to him." It was a test. If he said no, he wanted to keep me under surveillance. If he said yes, it meant he believed he had me completely under control, and my absence would give him more freedom with his mistress. Preston barely looked up from his phone. "Yeah, fine, go rest. I'm busy anyway." He handed me $100 as if I were receiving charity, and I took it with trembling hands, swallowing the shame because I had to stay in character. The next morning, Jaden and I took a Greyhound bus back to my hometown, leaving behind the image of poverty, of a wife so broke she couldn't afford anything better. My mother met us on her small porch, surprised and relieved, and I waited until that evening, when no one else was in the house, to tell her everything. My mother went pale, then flushed red with anger. "That bastard, how dare he? I'll go to Charlotte and—" "No, Mom," I cut in, gripping her hand. "If we make a scene now, I'll lose everything. I might even lose Jaden. But Mom, I need your help. You're the only one I trust." I took the lottery ticket out of my pocket and placed it in my mother's calloused hands. "Mom, I won $50 million in the lottery." Her eyes widened as she stared at the ticket, and then at my face as if I had lost my mind. "Kendra, sweetheart, you're—" "It's true, Mom, but I can't claim it myself. If Preston finds out, he'll take it all. You have to claim it for me. Keep it a secret. Don't tell Dad. Don't tell anyone. Can you do that for me?" My mother, who had worked herself to the bone her whole life cleaning houses and doing laundry, looked at the ticket and then at her daughter's tear-streaked face. She was a woman who understood betrayal, who understood what it meant to fight for her child. She nodded firmly. "Yes, I will. You don't worry. This will be known only by us and God. I won't let anyone take a single cent from you." Over the next 3 days, I explained everything. My mother would call the lottery headquarters, arrange an appointment, bring her ID, request anonymity under the law. I took her to open a new account at a small credit union in the neighboring town, a place Preston would never think to look. The money, about $36 million after taxes, would be stored safely there, waiting. When I returned to Charlotte, Preston barely noticed my absence, except to remark that I looked less stressed. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. I had become an actress worthy of an Oscar. When Preston made me sit down to explain the terrible news about the company's bankruptcy and his fabricated $50,000 debt, I cried and panicked exactly the way he had predicted. When he asked about my savings, and I said I had used all of it to buy life insurance for Jaden, I saw a flash of relief in his eyes. The relief of a predator who thinks his prey has been cornered. "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "Did I do something wrong? I just wanted to protect our son's future." "It's done," he said with fake disappointment, and I knew he was celebrating inside. When I offered to work at his company to help during this difficult time, he accepted with barely concealed pleasure. He wanted me there, under his command, where I could watch the bankruptcy charade up close, and where Sienna could freely humiliate me. For weeks, I played the role of a defeated wife. I cleaned the office, made coffee, endured Sienna's smirks and Preston's coldness, while my eyes and ears stayed wide open. I watched everything, memorized passwords, befriended Eleanor, the head accountant, who, turns out, was not a willing accomplice of Preston's, but another person trapped by circumstance, disgusted by his conduct, yet dependent on her paycheck. The day I finally gained access to the real accounting files, the goldmine folder showing all the money he had hidden, all the fraud he had committed, my hands shook so badly I could barely control the mouse. But I got it, copied it onto the USB drive I had hidden, and Eleanor, who saw me and could have destroyed everything, instead handed me the drive and whispered, "Take it. Consider that I didn't see anything. Use it wisely." I opened a new spreadsheet and began combing through every single cash flow over the past 2 years, every deposit, every dollar going in and out, leaving nothing untouched. My income appeared clearly like a silent indictment. The freelance projects I took on after hours, every small contract accumulated over time, the uneven bits of savings from when I still worked before staying home with Jaden. Preston's income, on the other hand, looked stable, exactly the way he always bragged. Stable on paper. When I added everything up, the number that appeared made me freeze. Nearly 60% of this family's actual income had been created by me. And yet, for years, he had made me believe I was only a dependent, the one who handled trivial expenses while he carried the family. I moved on to our joint savings account. The balance was just over $3,000, an embarrassingly small amount, the result of all those promises Preston used that he was investing in the company to lull me into trust. But there were still accounts he had no idea about. The emergency fund I had quietly built from spare change, the small investments from my earlier savings, a contingency fund I had set up long ago just in case something ever went wrong. For the first time in many years, I realized I was not completely penniless the way Preston believed. I had only pretended to be. I logged into the credit card management portal and stared at the list of cards that had been feeding his double life. The Visa with a $25,000 limit for expensive suits and disguised dates. The American Express for client entertainment that was really dinners with Sienna. The Nordstrom card for clothes I had never seen him wear. The Best Buy card for items that had never appeared in this house. The gas card for all those increasingly frequent late nights at work. All of them served him, while I lived off discounts. I took a deep breath and dialed the first number. Everything ended faster than I expected. 12 minutes later, the $25,000 credit limit disappeared from Preston's hands. I moved on to American Express, then Nordstrom, then Best Buy, then the gas card. With each call, my voice grew calmer, my hands steadier. One by one, Every source of fuel feeding his betrayal was cut off. But I didn't stop there. I opened the list of automatic subscriptions: Spotify, Netflix, Amazon Prime, the premium food delivery service he used for his late nights at work, even the company internet line registered under my name. I canceled them all, no anger, no hesitation. Just deleting, one convenience at a time, the comforts he had used to build a life without me. After that, I called a local divorce law office, left my information, and requested an urgent appointment. I opened a new folder on my computer and named it Evidence. Bank statements, credit card bills, cash flow, proof, screenshots. Everything was lined up like chess pieces waiting for the day the board would be flipped. This would not be a simple divorce. This would be a reckoning. And Preston, still unaware, every door behind his back had already begun to lock, one by one. When Preston finally demanded a divorce, I gave the performance of my life. I laid all the evidence of the affair on the table, along with the divorce agreement my lawyer had prepared. I didn't ask for much, only the things I rightfully deserved. He signed the papers granting me full custody with no financial obligation. The house was mine, and he still thought he had won, not realizing he had just handed me exactly what I needed. The divorce was finalized in court on a stormy, rain-soaked day. The judge approved everything without a single question, simply because our divorce looked like a case of a husband abandoning a poor, weak wife with no power to fight back. Preston and Sienna walked away with bright smiles, free and victorious. They had no idea what was about to happen. The next 6 months were the sweetest revenge I could ever imagine, because I didn't have to do anything at all except watch karma take over with a little financial acceleration. With the lottery money, I gave $500,000 to Darius, Preston's former business partner, the man he had deceived the same way he tried to deceive me. Together, we founded Ashery's Construction, a company that competed directly with Preston's, but with better quality, better prices, and better business ethics. Preston's company, built on fraud and hidden money he could no longer access without raising suspicion, began to collapse. Clients walked away. Suppliers cut ties with him. Within 6 months, his company declared bankruptcy. The luxury condo was seized. Sienna, pregnant and demanding, became a burden instead of a prize. He threw her out of the house, her and their newborn son, showing everyone exactly what kind of man he really was. Eventually, he found me, showing up at my new upscale apartment building, looking homeless and desperate, dropping to his knees and begging me to take him back, swearing that Sienna had seduced him, promising to be a good husband to me if I would just help him with money. I won the lottery, I told him, watching his face drain of color. $50 million. The same day I found out about you and her. You threw away half of that money, $25 million that could have been yours. But don't worry, I've put that money to very good use. Ashery's Construction? That's mine. The company that destroyed you? I paid for it. He tried to lunge at me, shouting about lawyers, courts, and his rights, and security dragged him away while he screamed threats and curses. A week later, I received the court summons I had been waiting for so long. He sued me for half the lottery winnings, accusing me of hiding assets during the marriage. Perfect. I wanted him in court. I wanted witnesses. I wanted everything on record. The trial unfolded exactly the way I had planned. His lawyer argued that the lottery ticket was marital property. Then I presented my evidence. Every file from the USB drive, every proof showing that Preston had hidden millions of dollars, that he had fabricated debts, that he had been planning to deceive me long before I ever won the lottery. I played the recording of his affair right there in the office, the part where he and Sienna laughed about destroying me. The judge's expression shifted from neutral to furious as she reviewed the evidence. And then, as if staged, federal agents entered the courtroom to arrest Preston for tax fraud and falsification of documents. The handcuffs clicked onto his wrists, cameras flashed nonstop, and reporters scribbled furiously. He looked at me with hatred and desperation, and I turned my back and walked out into the sunlight. The game was over. I had won. 1 year later, Jaden was 5 years old. He was smart, cheerful, and completely unaware that his father was in prison. He believed his father was away on a business trip and might one day return, and I would tell him the truth when he was old enough to understand. Asherai's construction thrived under Darius's leadership. I became a respected investor in the Charlotte business community. I founded a fund called Second Chances to help single mothers escape abusive relationships, providing legal support, financial education, and startup capital for women to rebuild their lives. Because I understood what it felt like to be trapped, to feel foolish, to feel like there were no other options. Every woman we helped was a woman who did not have to wait for a lottery ticket to save herself. One Saturday afternoon, I took Jaden to Freedom Park to fly a kite. The wind was strong, perfect for flying kites, and his dragon-shaped kite soared high against the blue Charlotte sky. He laughed and ran across the grass, while my parents sat on a nearby bench, smiling and waving. I watched my son, looked up at the sky, and felt something I hadn't felt in many years: complete peace. Money has power, yes. $50 million gave me the resources to fight back, to protect my son, to destroy the man who tried to destroy me. But true power came from something else, from refusing to be a victim, from being smart enough to keep a secret until the right moment, from finding allies in unexpected places like Eleanor and Darius, from understanding that revenge is not rage but justice. The nightmare was over. The trial was finished. Everything was settled. Now my life is wealth, freedom, and hard-won happiness. The happy ending I claimed for myself step by step, with patience, planning, and an iron will that only comes when you have everything to lose.